Welcome back to Everyday Apologetics. I'm Robert Jarvis. Today's chapter, we're going to be discussing, do we need to be free to experience love? And that question obviously kind of brings up the obvious dilemma. Are we truly free? And is that freedom required to experience true love? So in essence, did God create us free, or is everything kind of predetermined? And I'm going to kind of put forth the idea that we absolutely have to be free in order to experience true love, and that God absolutely created us free so that he could be in that relationship with us, and it would be something that was give and take. The other version of events I kind of want to mention quickly is if you think of like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Daniel Dennett, and I guess what you call the new atheists, they put forth the idea that love is really nothing more than biochemistry and physiology and, learned behavior, really for the only purpose, for evolutionary purposes, just to kind of get us to, what was Dawkins' quote? To propagate our DNA. And the other quote I like by Dawkins is also, really love is just love, and all of this thing we're doing in life is just dancing to our DNA. So we're nothing really but wet robots, just kind of obeying programs and going through the motions. And it's kind of really as empty as that. So that's one version of events. The other version of events is that God created us free, and that love is a free choice. And that's what I believe is the truth. And I'm going to use another example from my life with my own children. In this case, I'm going to be using my oldest son, Owen. And it was when he was about 6 years old. We were going to a birthday party for his aunt. And it was like a 30 person party. So there was a few tables of people, kind of gathered around. And we were at this one far table. And Owen wasn't eating. Like most kids, when they just don't want to eat, they're just kind of picking at their food. And we really wanted to get him, eating something. So I decided to play a little game with him. And I said, okay, Owen, you pretend you're a good little robot, and I'll be kind of the commander, and I'll give you commands, and you kind of just follow the commands. And Owen's like, oh, okay. So I would say, like in my best robot staccato voice, Owen, eat dinner. And Owen would like take a bite of his chicken, and I would tell him to eat a French fry, and he would do that. And it would kind of go on. And then we would say things like, take a drink or pass the salt. Owen loved the game. He was just obeying every little thing. And then I said to him at one point, I said, Owen, go hug your Aunt Kim. And so Owen gets up from his place and he walks two chairs over where Aunt Kim is. She's at the table with us. And, he gives her this little hug. And Aunt Kim kind of just gives him this little like, oh, thanks, Owen. That was really nice. And sends him back to his chair. And then I say, Owen, Papa's way over there. He doesn't know, I'm telling you this, but go give him this big hug. So Owen's like, okay. So Owen goes over there, like he, runs over there and sees Papa and jumps into his lap and gives him this big hug. Well, Papa, he thinks this is the greatest thing in the world, because all of a sudden his grandson just came over and gave him this huge hug. So he's hugging him. He's like, oh, thanks, buddy. And everyone at the table is like, oh my God, that's so sweet. And when I look back, it kind of struck me. The two examples there, we had one example where it was like, he was commanded or told to kind of just hug my Aunt Kim. And she knew that. And she gave him kind of like that bro hug, the acquaintance kind of hug, like, hey, buddy, thanks. And when we told him to go over and hug his grandpa, his papa, a few tables over, he didn't know what was going on. He thought that was a genuine, just free act of love that Owen gave him. And he took that in like it was the greatest thing in the world. And I really believe that story spoke to me about love not being determined. I think that if we reflect on that, if we looked at, we would think as parents or anyone, whether it's you love your friend or your spouse or your children, that if love is demanded, it's not love. You can't receive love if it's demanded. It's like paying with real money and getting counterfeit money in return for change. It's like a fraudulent transaction. And so I think he knew he had to create us free in order to experience real relationship with him, and in order for us to experience real love with him, and to experience real love amongst ourselves. The other problem with that, though, is, as most parents or anyone else watching knows, that you also have the choice to not love. So you're free to love, but you're also free not to love. And so God obviously took that risk. And obviously, sometimes that doesn't work out in his favor, because if I just look around at, the majority of people I know in my life, most of them are people that follow after God and try to bring God in their life. But there's quite a few of them that want nothing to do with God and have kind of just said, nope, I want nothing to do with God. I don't believe in God. I don't really care. And that's kind of the risk of love. That's the risk God had to take, I believe, also. He took that risk to say, I have to make them free to love me, but they're just as free to not love me and rebel. So with that being said, the question, do we need to be free to experience love? Absolutely, I believe that's true. And I think I'm going to read the questions here, the reflection questions at the end of the chapter, because again, I believe that the questions they just lead to the best insight. If you spend the time to kind of reflect on them, they'll lead you there automatically. So let's go to the questions. The first question was, can you see the difference that love offered freely and love demanded would make in your relationships, especially with your children? So, and again, that's for anyone. If you're not a parent, just think of all your relationships in your life. If that love was demanded, if you knew it was demanded, how would that change your relationships? Number two, can you think of a time of free expression of love or appreciation from one of your children melted your heart? Can you see that God may feel the same about you? And I just think about, all the times my children have randomly come up to me and just wrapped their arms around me and told me they love me. How special that is, how much that means to me. And can you see that anytime you offer a free expression of love to God, just during the day, you just stop and just to say thank you and I love you, how much that would mean to God. Number four, reflect on the fact that you knew this potential existed before bringing your children into the world, and that their free will could bring about disastrous consequences for you and for them. Why did you choose to have children despite these risks? So that's a tough one. I mean, really spend some time thinking about that. You knew that your children, and maybe they already have, maybe they've already rebelled against you, or they may in the future. I have to face that possibility too. Why do I think that it's worth the risk though? Number five, reflect on the hopes and plans you have for your children's happiness and how it would make you feel if they turn from you, forging their own destructive path. How does this make you feel? I believe that's what God has to face every day. He made us free to love him, but also that means we're free to turn away from him. And I believe he sees that every day in our world. We're seeing it every day in our world. People turning from God, trying to find their own way without him, and how it just turns into absolute destruction. So that's this chapter on, do we need to be free to experience love? Obviously, I believe we do. Hopefully, the reflection questions will, help you kind of ponder and comment below. And again, I'll join the discussion. I hope to join it and see what you guys think. Join for next video. Thanks.